All right, we're right at 2 p.m. Eastern, so we're going to go ahead and get started here with the webinar. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. I know we've got a lot of people from all over the United States and even a few attendees worldwide. So just to give a quick run of show of the agenda that we're going to cover during the webinar today, we're going to go through introductions to introduce our panelists. We're going to talk about some of the market trends that we're seeing in college athletics. Then we'll dive into the use case of the Big East, Flow Sports, and Rush, and what they're doing together to bring more games to more people across the country this year. And then we'll do a quick question and answer. So as you think of questions that you have, there should be a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you type those in. And after we get through those initial agenda items, we'll make sure to take questions from the audience here. So the first thing here is introductions. And since I've got the mic, I'll start out and then turn it over to the rest of the panelists. So I'm Dave Shapiro. I'm the president of North America for Pixellot. A little overview of Pixellot. We're the worldwide leader in automated production. We produce over 3,000 sports events every single day worldwide, with about 70% of those being in the United States. And essentially what we do is use AI and machine learning to track the action in sports events, so that you don't need to have a cameraman or editor. You can automatically produce sports events, which gives you the ability to bring more events to more people across your fans and different people that want to watch the game. And then in addition to production, we also have coaching software to analyze and break down every game that we're producing. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, David. My name is Mike Levy. I will try and figure out how to turn off text messaging on my computer. Apologies for that. I have been with Flow Sports for 7+ years. Prior to that, I was at ESPN for about 8 years. Flow has been a fantastic ride for me. Like everybody else here, we're passionate about the mission of creating a streaming service that uniquely serves fans, sports, leagues, and rights holders that are generally perceived as underserved. Our mission fundamentally is to fight for our sports, delivering not only live events, but also exclusive content that create community around the sports that we serve. As it specifically relates to this conversation with Pixellot, they're very much aligned with what we do in terms of trying to create efficient and high quality productions for sports that typically may not necessarily have the funding or resources to do something that might traditionally be seen on an ESPN, CBS, or NBC. We've tackled that face on with our friends with the Big East and many others in the collegiate landscape, something that we're really passionate about in terms of elevating the game for all levels of competition, and creating a viewership experience that wows the fans and consumers that we directly serve.
Great. Tim, let's go to you.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, David. I'm Tim Eichhorst. I'm the owner of Rush Media. Rush Media is what's known in the industry as a production packager. And what that means is we provide services based on what the clients are looking for to turnkey a production of mostly a sporting event. We have dabbled in entertainment, but primarily sports. Our revenues are derived from one of really two sources. One are the content rights holders themselves. A good example is the Big East Conference, where we're a partner with them to produce largely what we're going to talk about today with the Big East Digital Network. And on the other end, networks themselves. So folks like CBS or Fox that have us package events for their linear broadcast television network. So we invest in our own equipment, our own resources. The intent is to hire us to produce a game in a manner that is acceptable to all parties at the right economic model as well, and put it on a platform or a network that everyone can be proud of.
Great. Rick, you're still on mute there.
I'm Rick Gentile and I'm on mute. I thought somebody had to do that. I am a Senior Associate Commissioner for Broadcasting for the Big East Conference. I've been with the conference since the beginning of the relaunch in 2013. My background is in broadcasting. I was both programming and production at CBS Sports for many years. So I came to the Big East with that experience. I was the father of the Big East Digital Network, which we launched, I think, in year 2, doing a minimum number of games. Got together with Rush Media shortly thereafter and really have grown the digital network to the point where now we're producing probably 300 events on our own and assisting our schools with additional events, all of which go to Flow Sports. So really, Tim, Mike, and I are joined at the proverbial hip, and we've had a great run that we hope will continue.
Great. So the next thing that we want to talk about are just some of the market trends that we're each seeing. Mike, Rick, Tim, myself all spend a lot of time in college athletics. Pixellot specifically as a team of people that are talking with ADs and coaches on campus nearly every day. So I'll start out with some of the trends that we're seeing and then turn it over to the rest of the panelists. So I'd say the first thing that we've noticed, especially in the last 12 months, is that content is becoming king. Nearly every university that we talk to wants to produce more events than they did the year before, and bring production across campus. The second thing is with less students being on campus, now we're starting to get back to full attendance on campus. But regardless, with more events being added, there's a shortage of students to produce events, and then also a shortage of equipment that as universities scale and add more events, it's harder to keep up with equipment. A lot of times the university just has equipment to produce one event at a time. As you can imagine, there's lots of events on each campus as you get to larger schools. The third thing is with NIL becoming a big thing, now the student athletes want to get their hands on content for their own personal monetization. So the need to capture practice and every single game is of higher value across campus. And then the fourth thing, at least that we're seeing, is the need for different and more alumni and fan engagement. Alumni has not been on campus as much. That's obviously a big donor base for every university. So again, the need to bring some of the sports that weren't produced before to connect with alumni is becoming important. And then the last thing that I'll note is the NCAA, at least for basketball, just rolled out tech on the bench, where coaches can have live video and live statistics on the bench. Other sports also are starting to utilize that. So just in general, technology for coaches is becoming a bigger thing. Mike, Rick, or Tim, anything else you guys want to add in addition to that?
Yeah, am I unmuted? Good. I would say, in addition to alumni and fans, one of the huge audiences is family, right? So it becomes a great recruiting tool for a coach to go to a kid's house in whatever sport it is, lacrosse. Go to a kid's house and say, "Come play for us. We'll have coverage on Flow Sports of X amount of games, 30, 40, whatever the number is. And your family can see you play, right?" And coaches, when we launched the digital network, pre-Flow, when we were just sort of throwing stuff up wherever, whoever would take it, it was a great tool. The coaches said, "This is great. This really helps me." So I think that's a big ingredient in streaming of events. I mean, I think that's become one of the most successful areas.
I would add, David, that I think it's also expected that the content is available. We've grown up in the last decade where the increase of the ability of the internet to be faster, the ability of technology to produce better quality content, whether it's automated or not, has expanded rapidly. So you have kids coming out of high school, and the high school space very well yourself, that they may go to college and all of a sudden their games aren't streamed when all their games in high school were streamed. So it's almost a given that it's expected that the content is available when your child or son or daughter is playing college sports. they'd be surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point, Tim. With the rise of streaming of sports in high school, now if you're streaming in high school but not in college, something seems wrong, right?
Yeah, we generally have the philosophy of Flow, or we are planning that virtually every sporting event, literally from youth down to 5 or 6 years old, all the way through pro and international athletics, will be available somewhere. It's not if, it's when. And the camera phones are becoming so impactful that everything is going to be available. And so the question that we ask ourselves at Flow is, okay, if everything is going to be available somewhere, how does one differentiate themselves in a world where production becomes, in essence, commoditized? And that's where this partnership and this kind of conversation that we're having is so interesting, right? Because you have the opportunity with great partners like the Big East, great production companies like Rush, great technology like Pixellot, and a group like Flow, who not only wants to distribute the live, but tell the stories as to why fans, parents, recruits, or whoever should care about those games. Therein lies what we hope is the differentiator. Because at some point in time, and perhaps we're already there, there are in any given Saturday, literally thousands of competitions available to stream. How does a consumer, family, fan, recruit, whatever, know where to go to find any particular game and why they should care about watching it? And so that's it, for our role and how we think about the world, that's how we tackle that. Pixellot is obviously a technology that's very accessible. We want to pay for that on behalf of our partners, and then also build awareness as to why fans and communities should care and put it in the right environment.
I love it. I've got 3 kids that play sports, and every game I go to, you have like hundreds of parents with their cell phone up, and the type of footage you're getting is not very good. You've got bad audio with everybody yelling all over the place. So if you can bring more streamlined production, I agree. There's an audience all the way down to T-ball. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second. We have a lot of other colleges on the line here and conference representatives. So it'd be great if you can just highlight a little bit the solution that Flow Sports and Pixellot is bringing to the college market.
Yeah, so it's similar to what I was just saying. When we go out into the marketplace, some of the conversations that we have, we really take an approach where we fundamentally want to understand the pains that our partners are feeling. So it's not necessarily the same in one given conference, as each member of a conference might have different needs in any given partnership. So we try very, very hard to not be cookie cutter. One institution might have severe production deficiencies. To your point earlier, David, they may not have students, they may be unreliable, the equipment may be unreliable. So Flow is always coming through the lens of how do we solve a problem. In that particular case, we've aligned with Pixellot, where Flow would like to offset production costs by working through Pixellot, supplying the equipment and installing it on campuses to ensure that every single competition on a given field or venue is able to be streamed without, essentially turnkey, without a heavy lift being needed by that individual institution. So not only does that help with getting a consistency of programming out at a high quality video production, but it also solves for a personnel problem and potentially a cost problem at any given institution, regardless of NAIA, D3, D2, or even D1. There are economic struggles across the NCAA landscape. If production isn't a problem, that's okay. We still want to support an individual institution. If they have a great journalism school or whatever, we'll still supply an economic benefit to make it part of the whole for an individual conference or an institution. And then we want to supply all of that with, again, the context building that I referenced earlier. News, information, maybe pregame shows, articles, to share with fans and consumers why a particular conference, whether it's Big East or Gulf South, why that's relevant and why those stories are compelling. And answer your question? David?
Yep, that's perfect. So the next one, Rick or Tim, either of you can take this. It'd be great if one of you can just give an overview of the Big East Digital Network and how you guys are innovating, why you brought in Pixellot and Flow Sports this year.
I can start out and then throw it to Tim. We started, as I said before, with the Big East Digital Network doing a handful of games, championships, and a smattering of regular season stuff. We've been able to grow that into the hundreds, and now, as I said, up to probably 300 this year events. By basically being cost conscious, but also being quality conscious. I think what Mike said before about expectations is really important. People expect to see events. They're used to it, and I don't know if the differentiator is quality. I like to think it is because that's my background, but we like to think that we want to do a good job in production. Obviously, cost is a factor, and not every school has I loved Mike's severe production deficiency. That's going to be my new mantra. Look, some of our schools, lots of schools around the country, don't have the student workers, the wherewithal, the finances to create a quality production. And we have for years, Tim and I, talked about how we can help in that area, how we can do for our schools what needs to be done so they can deliver quality production, quality product. And Pixellot, the Pixellot solution, and I'll let Tim go from here, has been a great boon because, we just talked about this before. If we've got, I'll make up numbers, if we've got $5,000 to produce an event and Pixellot can save us some money, my attitude is not to say, okay, we can pocket $1,000 or whatever the number is. It's, okay, how much more can we now do for $5,000? That's our bankroll. We can improve the quality of the production now substantially rather, because we have a technology like Pixellot that's helping us. And with that, I'll throw it to Tim.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I would maybe start back to the beginnings or the origins of the Big East Digital Network. And as Rick referred to, we were doing a smattering of games, which then grew to 100, now to 200, now up to what he's referenced as over 300. Back in the day, which is only a few years ago, all the shows were intended to be the same: a 4-camera production, 2 on-air talent. No matter where we were, what sport it was, indoor, outdoor, the Big East Digital Network product was to be the same look and the same feel across the board. And that's how we operated all up until COVID. And COVID, in a way, allowed us the opportunity to retrench and rethink about that. My infrastructure build at the time was traditional production Sprinter vans in this case, which we built and developed and dispersed across the conference and hired resources, some within the school, externally, and that's how the games were produced in the very traditional way that we kind of all grew up with. When we went through the COVID year last year, and partly it still exists today, but that gave Rick and I the opportunity to do something we had always talked about, was should we look at now varying the different production investment on each game while trying to maintain the overall budget that the Big East had for the project, but increase the number of games. At the same time, he was, in discussions with Flow, and that's a derivative of this as well. And we looked at, okay, let's do smaller productions, let's do bigger shows, let's kind of adapt as we see the seasons unfold to bigger games, to games that we maybe thought were big that have moved, or whatever the circumstances may be. We decided to take that leap to do that. And by doing that, we also then decided that we needed to start over with infrastructure to be able to do that. We didn't need to deploy a bigger 6-camera truck to do a single camera volleyball game or something like that. And AI and the Pixellot product has continued to evolve. I've been aware of it for many, many years, even before you were there, David. And it's, we knew at that point it was time, if we were to start from scratch, we would start with an automated solution and then build upon it. So our, in a weird sense, we weren't starting from zero and going up. We were starting from up and going down to now integrating an automated solution, bringing it to market, and then, you know, make it a more complicated show by going multi-camera with it, trying to figure out how we can further enhance and take it to the next level. Because our vision, I think I would speak to Rick, is to not to just produce a whole bunch of array-based games. You know, we want multi-camera solutions. We want to kick that up, that production level up as best we can. That makes sense, again, without, you know, blowing the budget away. And the last piece, as it comes to really the relationship, and, you know, obviously we work closely with all 11 schools, 10 when we first started, now with the addition of UConn. And, you know, like you would expect, every single school has their own internal capabilities or lack of capabilities when it comes to production. So in a sense, my role with the conference is produce games on their bequest, what they would like me to do at the quality they expect, and B, help schools learn how to do this themselves, in a way almost putting myself out of business. Because in my perspective, I see that as my role, is to teach kids where there's a commitment to doing it and to helping individual schools in the conference get to that next level, not make some of the same mistakes I do when you CapEx certain types of equipment over the years. We've all done that, and teach them. And you know, we've had great success in hiring kids from those schools, full-time positions into Rush Media. In fact, the bulk of our company are kids that we started with in a college somewhere that we've given full-time work. You know, they wanted to make this into a career. So I view our position as both the service, the events that Rick wants us to, but also to help the schools.
And I just to sort of put a little perspective, when Tim said we were forced in essence by COVID to rethink, to retrench and rethink of how we're going to do what we have traditionally done, it gave us some opportunities to go back to ground zero and start over. But we're not alone. The broadcast networks are doing the exact same thing. You know, everybody's looking at things differently. Lots more remote productions. Lots more, you know, producer director in a studio somewhere, and talent somewhere else, and a game in the third place. You know, so this is happening all over, and it really, I'm not going to say it's a plus, but it's really given networks an opportunity to rethink what they've always done, instead of the sort of, you know, knee jerk, this is how we cover a football game. You know, maybe this is out of left field, but the controversy right now between, I don't know if everybody knows about it, but ESPN and the Pac-12, where ESPN's been criticized for not committing the resources to some Pac-12 games, and I don't know how true all this is, but it's been in, you know, the various media. It goes to the expectation thing again. ESPN's looking, as all broadcasters are, to cut back when possible, without really making it negative to the viewer, with trying to make it invisible to the viewer. And in some cases that blows up. In the case of this controversy with the Pac-12, it was, viewers have reacted and said, this is horrible, you know. And ESPN has basically sort of apologized and added equipment. So this is going on all over the industry. And the goal is to do it so that it is not that ESPN Pac-12 thing. It's to do it so that the viewer is still serviced. The schools are still serviced, and we're pretty confident that we've been able to pull that off. And again, Pixellot's going to take us a lot farther down the road.
The key there, and I hope that Tim and Rick will back me on this. You don't necessarily need to spend more to get substantially better quality. There are one of the things that Flow is trying to contribute to the community here is the cost-effective solutions that still create great quality. And just as a sales button, I guess, for Pixellot, that's the solution that we've come across that does that. Better even in most cases than someone holding a camera up and pointing it. The Pixellot solution, which is automated, is as good or better than human beings, which is crazy to say, perhaps, but it's been our perspective that is in fact true.
Great. Yeah, and I really commend Rick and Tim, you guys, for almost erasing the whiteboard and coming and, thinking of a new strategy. And Bill, I love what you said, building from the bottom up, that now the baseline is produce every event, and then where do we add on and increase production value for games that you might want to. I'm curious, Rick, this is probably for you. Did the demand to rethink things and add more games come from the conference, thinking, we got to expand our reach, and there might be additional monetization opportunities, or was it from the bottom up that schools were starting to say, Rick, like, we really need to add, more softball games or women's lacrosse or water polo, et cetera?
Sort of a combination. That really the genesis of getting more done is because we had success, again, as I said before, about the recruiting tool. We showed a handful of volleyball games in year 1, 2, 3, 4. And the volleyball coaches said, oh my God, this is sensational. Can you do more? And every year we would meet with all of our coaches. Every year at the Big East, we would have the coaches would all come into New York, and they'd have sit around and talk, and I would be brought into the meeting and bombarded with, why can't you do more? So there was certainly a desire from the schools. And by doing more, what they were looking for was wider distribution, not necessarily focused on improving production techniques. It was really about, can you do more games and get them out there so this would be a more advantageous in terms of recruiting. So we were always looking to do more. And, we weren't given a huge budget, but we thought we had enough of a budget to accommodate doing a certain amount of games. Our deal with Flow enabled us to do a little more, and their appetite was, we would have been satisfied delivering 300 events, but they wanted more. And we kind of thought, well, it plays into our hands because that's our ultimate goal anyway. So we went back to our schools and said, we could make a really nice deal with Flow Sports, get great distribution, be part of that community where they've got all of these viewers, that are interested in Olympic sports and women's basketball, et cetera. And they want more. So let's give them more. Let's figure out a way to increase the amount of events we can deliver. We can't necessarily do every event to the degree, to the production capabilities that we've shown on BEDN, on the digital network, but let's do the best job we can. And, Tim's guys have been incredibly great innovators. I'm forever pushing quality. And I think, it's really come from every side, this desire to grow the digital network, to grow our capabilities. Our schools, for the most part, are interested in increasing their production capability. Everybody wants to do more. Everybody wants to get into this new digital landscape where everything is out there somewhere, where every event that takes place is covered. And, so I guess the long answer to the question is, the desire to grow has come from every possible direction.
Great. I love it. Tim, you talked a little bit about the work that you do with students on campus to help them learn production and create a program for each school. Some of the pushback that Pixellot will at times get is that they want to give opportunities for their students. And I know with the 43 systems that you guys are installing across the Big East, it's not getting rid of the student-run production. You're just reallocating what they're doing. So I'm curious, maybe you can talk a little bit to the audience about how you're re-envisioning the role that students play in productions.
Okay, well, I think that, yeah, it's wrong just to think about a Pixellot system as, eliminating any human capital that you need to operate a good production. Like Rick has said, he and I are like-minded when it comes to, we always want to make the show bigger. We're always going to push to make it bigger. In some cases, take chances with new technology, take chances with some inexperienced crew at times that we want to train. The whole industry has to do that, actually, especially coming out of COVID, where there's less and less resources available. So I think that it would be a mistake to think that installing a Pixellot system in a school that wants to evolve or has a established self-production capability, that it's just going to replace that is not correct. I think that every student that I've worked with at a school that either has gone on to a career in this business or come work for us has changed course multiple times in terms of what they want to be in this industry. Whether it's on air even, or they want to run a camera, they want to learn graphics. So I look at the interfacing with the kids as give them experiences across all the different parts of production, and then see where they start to gravitate, and then encourage that further development in a certain position. And they develop a lot of skills along the way. So I think that is at least my philosophy when it comes to it. I fully understand the challenges that schools have finding these kids, maintaining these kids. Of course, they're going to turn over every couple of years or every 4 years when they graduate, or become less interested in it, or they can't work because they have an exam on Thursday night and we're short a camera operator. I mean, there's all these nuances to why it's challenging to build a successful long-term program. And there's actually very few universities that have really accomplished that at a sustainable level, because it does refocus, and even at the leadership level, it's kind of changed. So it's wrought with challenges. And I think what's nice about what we have, I think, accomplished with the Big East is that there's broad support from the conference with Rick. Rick's a production guy at heart. He would love for me to work more and teach and himself teach these students how to be better at doing this. And automated is just another component of production that can be used to enhance what you're already trying to do.
Yeah, I always say, one of the really inconvenient things about working with students in production is that they have this nasty habit of graduating. We lose the people that we've trained have the audacity to go somewhere else in a couple of years. And it's really inconvenient. So, but we have to live with it.
Yeah, as soon as they get good at their job, probably right after doing it for a year or two, then they're off to something else.
They're gone.
Mike, a quick question for you. I think as we've come out of COVID, we've seen more universities, especially downstream in Division 2, 3, NAIA, start to charge for content. And there's always been a little bit of a hesitancy in the market around charging for their content. So it'd be great if you could just talk about the expectations around paying for content and some of the trends that Flow has seen.
Yeah, it's a great question. And one that we've been facing for a very, very long time. Flow went to subscription, I think back in 2008. I might be slightly off there, but we've been doing the subscription business on direct to consumer for a very long time. And we really haven't changed our pricing since 2008 when we launched the subscription business. And the good news is that I think we were right. And the rest of the marketplace, not just in sports, but in entertainment, generally speaking, is all evolving to pay to consume model. Probably the biggest boon to our business has been ESPN, because when they launched ESPN Plus and put so much content behind a paywall, it completely legitimized the idea that fans are going to be willing to pay. We've always known it. We've always had the data that showcased it, but there are always those rights holders out there that felt as if distributing for free was the way to go. But with all of the content out in the marketplace, again, back to those thousands of games that are available on a Saturday, it's very difficult to get anyone's attention. And so if we are able to monetize content, not only are we able to support our rights holder partners like the Big East with a guaranteed rights fee or contribution to offsetting their production costs, but we also have money left over to market and create incremental content to inform fans on why they should watch. That is only possible if these events generate revenue. And distributing for free simply doesn't actually, in fact, we have very little data to support the idea that distributing content for free digitally grows sport and even grows viewership. We were really pleased to share with Rick and his team a few weeks ago that comparatively on Flow behind a paywall, we're actually driving more viewership than when it was distributed for free. We have an amazing case study with the NCAA cross country national championships, where we actually went head to head with a free distribution on ncaa.com, and Flow had more viewers on Flow Track, our track property, than NCAA did distributing for free on their .com. And the reason is all about community. So back to Rick's comment that Flow wants more and more and more. We want all the games. If we had our choice, we would take everything, because we create a community where we're the one-stop destination for a fan to watch their sport, their team, or their event. And then they keep coming back. And then they realize that there's other content there in the same general environment that they really like. So their subscription for one offering, Big East women's basketball, all of a sudden they realize, well, they've also got the Battle for Atlantis, where not only is UConn playing, but so is Mississippi State and South Carolina and other great teams that they want to view. And so they stick around longer. And that's when things start snowballing into a value proposition back to the individual purchaser, back to the individual rights holder, that you're getting far more than you realized with your dollar. And there's a bit of a surprise and delight there that has been really beneficial to us growing our business.
Great. So after hearing Mike talk, it's pretty clear to me why the Big East Digital Network would go to Flow. But Rick, I'm curious, in your words, I'm sure that you guys either thought about distributing it directly to the market, or ESPN or CBS, other potential rights holders out there. What are some of the key reasons why you guys chose to bring the network to Flow?
Well, we had in the past, we have an exclusive arrangement with Fox, which essentially owns all of our sports product, has first dibs on everything, and pretty much passed on most of the Olympic sports, most of the women's basketball. And so we took that and we said, well, we want to produce, digitally, we want to stream a lot of these events. And originally we put it on Fox Sports Go, I believe was the name of the original app that they had. So they distributed on Fox Sports Go. It was free. Friends and family were watching to some degree, not in big numbers. But there was no, getting back to Mike's community, there was nobody else was going to watch, right? If you were a cross-country fan, you weren't going to go find the Big East cross-country championships. It just wasn't going to happen. It's on Fox Sports Go, but we're only getting our limited number of friends and family. Fox Sports Go app disappeared. We became free agents in a sense, and we put stuff on YouTube, on Twitter. Again, it was free, right? We just sent the stream there, and people that knew our schools promoted it on their various social media and website, et cetera. So again, friends and family went to YouTube or Twitter and found it, but we didn't tap into that community. We were kind of out there in a vacuum, right? Eventually, we sat with Flow. We went down to Austin. Clark Pierce, who's out there in cyberspace watching somewhere, and I went down to Austin, and we met with Flow, and we loved what we heard. We fell in love with the whole idea of being part of a community, being streamed on a platform that supported other sports, other events in our sports, that had grown fans, that had people who were looking for new content, and we could potentially be that new content. So the cross-country championships that were going to the 18 people who were interested in the various kids who were running was now going to a place where there actually were cross-country fans and track fans looking for content. And that was magical to us. That was like, oh man, this is where we want to be. This is the kind of situation we want to be in. And that really was the genesis of it. And then obviously more conversation, and we pulled off the deal, and the deal spurred us, as I said before, to produce more and more. So it's really been I think it's been a win-win. Can't speak for Mike, but I think it's been a win-win.
I would just add too, Rick, because you touched on a really, really important point, and that this is the brilliance of Flow, is that they figured out that the aggregated national audience of consumers on ESPN Plus is dwarfed by the aggregated audience that they can do about people who care about a community. It's 10 times bigger to get everybody in a room that cares about cross country to find that event than it is putting it on a national platform like an ESPN or a Fox Sports Go at the time. There's lots of modeling, especially in the regional sports network world, around advertising in this example. And, a brilliant company now owned by Playfly was Home Team Sports, whose basic advertising model was the same concept. Get people into community, and that is where your numbers are going to be dwarfed versus a national network.
Great.
We have some,
Go
just
ahead,
very
Mike.
briefly. Sorry, David. We just have some interesting psychology and studies that we've done that as many people are massive UConn athletic fans, for example, they are more likely to be fan of a sport than they are of an institution. So back to the cross country example, you could have been a Division I runner at UConn. That doesn't make you a basketball, soccer, or tennis fan. You want to be in the sport that you love and that you've been passionate about for whatever reason, and that's where you want to spend your time. So we're really the only ones in the sports ecosystem that are doing it this way, vertically by sport. We guessed right way back when, Mark and Martin, and it's been working really well for us.
And when we first started talking to Flow and we're talking to our schools about the potential of making a deal, and the paywall was a factor. You brought it up before. There's no question that asking the fans and the family who have been watching for free on the YouTubes to pay was like, well, why do we want to do that? And the idea was because we can tap into the community, the larger community. And the question, many times I got questions like, well, why would anybody else be interested in watching the swimming and diving championships if their kid wasn't competing in it? I said, because there actually are swimming and diving fans out there, particularly collegiate swimming and diving fans who like this stuff. And they're already there. And they might say, oh, wait, look what's on the Big East swimming and diving championships. People were astounded that could possibly be of interest to anybody but grandma. And I think the numbers so far, and my sort of instinct is that we now can tap into this community that we couldn't do when we were in a vacuum on YouTube. We weren't going to get collegiate swimming and diving fans on YouTube to come and find us. Nobody's going to look there for it, but they will look on Flow Sports.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see, because if you look at the general landscape, I agree, most of it is organized by school or by conference, right? As opposed to Flow Hoops or Flow Soccer or Flow Baseball, especially as you go down to Division II and Division III, right? Every school has their own free network for the most part now. Some of them are charging subscription. But the points you made, Mike, around the increased viewership, I think is eye-opening for probably a lot of people here. Rick, it'd be great if you could help us understand from your perspective. I know you've got a lot of background in diamond sports, baseball, softball, just how you look at both indoor and outdoor productions, and also diamond versus left to right sports.
Well, people always have asked me for the 120 years I've been doing this, what's the hardest sport to cover? And I always say, is it hockey because of the speed? Is it, whatever? I always say it's baseball, because very often, you cover your pitch from center field, guy hits the ball, you take your high home camera, which can show the whole field, and that's it. But just think of the difference in covering a football game, which is left to right, right to left, or covering a baseball game when there's runners on first and third and the batter hits a line drive into the right center field gap. For the director, all hell breaks loose. Do you cover the ball? Do you cover the fielders? Do you cover the runners? You can't ignore the ball, because what if a guy bobbles the ball off the wall? And yet you want to show the runner scoring, and if there's going to be a play at a base, just think of the complication of where to go for a director in a situation like that. So, covering a diamond sport, and it's obviously the same as softball, as opposed to a linear back and forth sport, it's much more complicated. As far as, anytime you cover an outdoor sport, you're dealing with two major factors: the size of the field, generally, it's bigger, right? A football field is bigger than a volleyball court, and weather. And I don't just mean if it's going to rain or snow, because those are important factors, or if it's particularly cold or whatever. But sunlight can affect the iris of the camera. There's so many different conditions that take place outside. Inside, pretty much, if once you set up, you're good to go, right? Not much is going to happen that's going to affect the coverage. Where outdoors, you can be in sun, you can half sun, half shadow. Again, bad weather. So there's a huge difference. Just to get kind of specific with Pixellot, one of the reasons that we keep looking for the multi-camera solution to the automatic, array is I don't think, I'll just talk for myself, I don't think you can effectively cover a baseball or a softball with one camera. You can turn on your high home camera and shoot the whole field, but you're not doing justice. You can put a camera on a high first base, for instance, and see if you can be wide enough to cover the field. But anybody who's seen a baseball game knows that it just doesn't work. So in the perfect world, if we could use a Pixellot system with multi-camera application, then we're really somewhere. And
we're really excited to bring that to market with you guys this spring in baseball and softball. About 6 months ago, we launched our multi-angle solution that has the camera behind home plate, camera behind center field, and it's automatically switching between the two. So we've taught the system that as pitcher gets on the mound, batters in the box, you're going to be behind center field, zoomed in on pitcher and hitter, which is like 80% of a baseball or softball broadcast. And then as soon as the ball's hit, it sees the batter running, we go wide from behind home plate. And we actually tested this technology with Major League Baseball this summer, produced about 500 games for them across the Appalachian League and their new draft league, and had tons of success and are rolling it out to a bunch of other minor league venues in 2022. We're a little bit past our time. We had set the time for this at 45 minutes. But I'll give Tim, Rick, Mike, any closing comments that you guys want to make before we wrap up?
Not it. I'll just simply say, thank you for putting this together. Rick asked if this was the Big East partnership was mutually beneficial. The short answer is yes. We've been proving that it works, not only in terms of getting high quality production and distribution out there, but we're proving that these communities do in fact want more. And when it's easy to find and they know why they want to watch, because you've created some level of context and community, there's a misnomer out there that tier 2, tier 3 sports, colleges, and conferences cannot be profitable endeavors. It's false. Flow Sports is built on this. We launched on Flow Wrestling and Flow Track, and 15 plus years later, here we are, and we keep growing because, in fact, these communities matter. They have fans, and they just need to be served. My last thing is, God didn't come down and declare that the NFL shall be king. One of the Floriani brothers said that to me years ago, and I believe it. They had a marketing machine behind it that made it interesting for fans to come on board with. And we kind of have the unrealistic view that there's no reason why swimming and diving or wrestling or rugby or Brazilian jiu-jitsu can't be the next NFL. If the stories are told right and you build compelling production and compelling context, fans will come. They just need to understand why it's awesome.
I'm not so sure I agree that God didn't come down and see what he did about the NFL, but otherwise I'm with Mike. Our goal has always, our being the Big East and Rush, has always been to do more, to be able to do more without really sacrificing quality. Frankly, there was never a tremendous appetite among our schools to contribute more money so that we could do more. We couldn't figure out a way to do more, keep the quality up. And there was no real clamoring for more product. With the combination of hopefully Pixellot and Flow, we now have an opportunity to figure out a way that we can do more without blowing our budget, keep quality high, and we have somebody with a near insatiable appetite in Flow Sports that just wants 600's great, 700's better, 1200 is ideal. We kind of love the concept of that, the idea of that. So, we push forward.
And I'll just make a final comment, David, is that from my purview in production, which as Rick eloquently pointed out, is wrought with issues at times, whether it's weather or the venue you're dealing with or the circumstances you have. So I've always kind of reacted to just continuing to press forward and getting started with new things, whether it's new tech or different ways of doing things. So at some point, there's a hesitancy just to start. And, I can tell you, and Rick would tell you the same. I mean, we've had our fair share of bad shows on the Bees Digital Network, but our goal is to improve and continue to improve. And sometimes you do that with people, sometimes you do that with technology and resources and all the things involved. But the idea is you have to start. You have to get in the game and start doing it. And in some cases mess up so that you can learn on how to do it better and how to improve upon it. And that's production. It's not a pretty business at times to be in it when you're lugging a cable in the middle of a tornado after a 4-hour soccer game or something like that. So it's hard. And so for those of you that are on the webinar here and you're kind of on the fence, my encouragement is just get started and find companies that can help you get better at it.
Great. So my personal connection to all of this and this discussion is I played Division II baseball in the late 90s, and not one of our games was ever produced because baseball is a hard sport to produce and a smaller sport on campus. Football and basketball is where the budget went. And to me, it's sad if, student athletes across the country, whether you're a Division III, NAIA 2, Division I athlete, no matter what sport you play, you dedicate 18 years of your life, roughly 30, 40 hours a week to play a college sport. So the mission that Pixellot has of democratizing sports production hits home to me because we really feel like every game, whether it be T-ball up through college sports, should be produced, and our technology is helping enable that. So once again, I just want to thank Mike, Rick, Tim. Fascinating conversation here. I think you guys hit on a lot of things that are important to the audience. And it shows by how much you kept the audience. I think we had one person drop off since the beginning. So you guys definitely kept everyone's attention here. We'll have a recording of the webinar and share that with the audience so you can share that with others in your network too. And once again, want to thank everybody for their time here. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.